back. As you can see here, I've done 4 of them ahead of time just to kind of do some testers, see how it would come out. Also, too, to test my oil. I'm using, let me turn this down for a second. I'm just using Crisco vegetable oil, okay? And this was brand new when I bought it. It's down to about right there, so certainly I've used from about here to here. So about 3/4 of it. Although I have found that it's a little on the high side. I would suggest, a little less. I'm about 1 inch from the top of this 3-quart pot, which is certainly enough to cover the fried macaroni completely, but it does bring it kind of close to the top. And being, that we want to certainly be very, very, very careful. We don't want anything to overflow on us. I would suggest, making it about 1.5 inches or so from the top when you start. So this step here, always make sure that when you're heating oil, pan handles are to the back, okay? I'm not using a front burner because they can be very unsafe in that location. And I don't have, small ones running around my house, other than a couple dogs and a couple cats and a desert tortoise. But no little hands can, get up and grab that. But I still always, when I'm frying, put my items to the back, just because it is safer that way. You're going to need a slotted spoon, okay, to remove these from the oil. And then what I like to do is I like to test the oil to make sure that it's hot. And this was heated on medium-low heat, or medium-high heat, excuse me, for about 20 minutes. And I'm just going to put a couple little breadcrumbs in there and see if they start to sizzle, which they are. So, that is one thing you can do to test the oil if you don't have an instant read thermometer. As you're doing it, meaning heating it, I like to stir it a little bit, okay? Just to make sure that it is evenly warm. The other thing too, 1 second, sorry. Is if you do have some sort of little strainer, it's not bad to just kind of go in and lift out any little particulates that may have accumulated. Okay, and I got a little plate, got a little bowl right there. But if you don't, that's okay. Don't worry about it. It's not going to be, that big a deal. You'll be able to work with it just fine. But again, be very, 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 very careful, with hot oil. Depending on how I rotate this video, this could be the first item that you fry. This could be the second or the third item that you end up doing. So always, again, safety first. Now, if you're asking, Chef, what do I do with the standard breading procedure when I'm done with it? Throw it away. Don't save it. It needs to get thrown away. Pardon my dog, Pumpkin. She always seems to find the most inopportune times to take a 40-second drink of water. She's either part camel or diabetic or something, because I've never seen a dog drink so much in my entire life. But back to what we're doing. So I've got my oil. I know that it's warm enough. Here's another way that I can test too. I can always take one of these little macaronis and I can just partially submerge. Okay, see how it immediately starts to boil? That's a good sign. So that's what we want to see. We want to see that boiling. And I've turned my heat down by about 1/3. I would suggest probably not doing any more than 3 at a time. Because as you can see, the oil does get very close to the top. And again, in retrospect, I probably would have used, not probably, I would have used a little less. So I'm going to turn that down. That's a little hot. But that's a good sign, okay? The bubbles indicate that steam is pushing the oil away, okay? But I can also see that it's browned them a little faster than I wanted to. So I definitely got my oil a little too hot there, but it is a nice golden brown color. Now, because of the fact that I kind of got these a little browner a little too fast, and they're not going to be hot in the center, these would be good candidates for freezing. I can always take and I can freeze these. A couple of my students in the past have mentioned that they have air fryers, these would be great candidates for an air fryer. These right here. And I'm going to let that cool down just a little bit so we can do it live in the sense of how long should it take. These would be great to save for the next day. Pop them into an air fryer. They'd be awesome for that. You know, they're not really going to get super brown in an air fryer on a lower setting, but they will heat up. They heat up nicely in the oven as well too. So they'll be okay for, you know, in the oven, warming them up. And that's the other thing too. You know, a lot of times when we are frying something, we'll just flash fry it like I just did here. And then I can always finish them in a preheated 350 degree oven. So I'm just going to stir this just to kind of dissipate a little heat. I'm going to turn this probably off at this point. Okay, be very careful with your spoon. It will be hot. And I'm just going to let that kind of cool for a second. So you can do them long, like I'll show you here in a minute. Okay, or you can do them for a shorter period of time if you want to freeze them. And again, being that, you know, you're going to get 2 dozen, maybe up to 27, 28. You know, you can always take half of them and throw them in a little Ziploc bag and freeze them. And you can pull them out, you know, for an afternoon snack or, you know, even a lunch for that matter. Although I'd probably throw a salad and some green vegetables in there to augment the little fried macaroni and cheeses. But certainly, you know, that would work. All right, let's give this a little test. There we go. That's better. That's better. See how it's formed bubbles, but it didn't immediately start to rage. Okay, and that just indicates that I got my fat a little too high. You know, if you're working with an electric burner like I am, you guys know your stoves better than I do. I know how mine works. It runs really hot. Right now, mine is off. I mean, it's off, as you can see. And it still, you know, has a tendency of staying ultra hot. But that's what you want to see when you are frying. You definitely want to see, you know, those bubbles. And I'm just in there very gently, just kind of rolling them around so they don't stick to the bottom or burn. And also, too, I know that there are a few little loose particulates of breadcrumbs in there, and it also prevents those breadcrumbs from sticking as well, too. They need to fry for about 2 to 3 minutes. These, you know, probably about 2 minutes or so is more than I think sufficient. I want a nice golden brown color without them turning too dark. But this is the procedure for frying food. This is referred to as deep frying versus shallow frying. And of course, shallow frying would indicate that there's much less oil, usually only enough to come up about halfway. So those have a nice color to them. They're getting really close to getting done. As you can see, let's pull one out. So, you know, without me getting too much oil. It's a nice color. Too much oil on my counter. Okay. I'd say these are close to being done. And again, all I'm doing is just gently kind of rolling them around in my oil. Okay. And there comes one. Shake off your spoon carefully. Place it down. And your other. Shake gently. And then the last one as well too. Okay. There we go. And then I want to hit these when they first come out with just a little bit of fine salt. So I'm just using a little bit of salt on top of those. Okay. So I turn my heat back on. I'm about 3/4 of the way. So I'm just going to go ahead. I have 2 more here. So I'm going to go ahead and just add that one. And I'm going to go ahead and add this one. Okay. Now I'm going to turn my heat back up a little bit. That's the threshold as far as, you know, you don't want any less bubbles than what you see right there. So as you can see, there's still some bubbles pushing out, but it's not as vigorous as this batch right here. Not quite as much as we had there. But those will be okay, as again, as long as you see, you know, bubbles forming, that means that steam is being generated, and it's that steam as it's being forced outward that prevents the oil from getting into our product. So we got those there, then seasoned. We got our last 2 in here. And this certainly could be done within 1 day. I would just suggest that, you know, you give the macaroni and cheese at least a couple hours to cool before you form them into balls. Or it can be done like I did, because I had a lot of cooking that I had to do this weekend, both for class and for home. So, you know, I've been making macaroni and cheese, fried macaroni and cheese, stuffed chicken legs or stuffed chicken thighs with jalapenos wrapped in bacon and basted with barbecue sauce. And in the personal, I made some French onion soup because my wife likes French onion soup. So my last 2 days have been pretty busy domestically with doing some cooking, making some beef stock, French onion soup, macaroni and cheese, fried macaroni and cheese, stuffed thighs with jalapenos, basted with barbecue sauce, wrapped in bacon. Those are pretty bomb, I have to admit. Not my idea, you know, something I kind of got the idea from the internet, but it worked and it was pretty good. Actually, they'd go well with this macaroni and cheese as a little tiny side. So here you can see that doing it a little lower, it'll take just a little bit longer to brown the outside, but the advantage to doing it at a little lower temperature is that you'll heat the inside. You know, those first 3 that I put in that just browned almost immediately, I venture to say they're probably a little chilly in the inside. These, of course, were warm. These would be warm, hot, however you want it indicated, and these will be as well too. So you can flash fry them for later use, like I mentioned, you know, freezing them, putting them into an air fryer or even into a preheated oven. Or you can do it at a lower temperature, which will take a little longer, but will ensure that the insides are nice and warm. So just again, kind of rolling these around a little bit. Go ahead and pull one out. So as you can see, they're getting to be a nice brown color. Always be careful with the spoon. Never tilt it back up towards yourself because the oil will run down the handle and burn your fingers. Same thing with a pair of tongs as well too. Although I would strongly suggest probably not using a pair of tongs, only because, you know, you could squish them. You know, again, tongs are kind of like a big pair of tweezers, and we don't realize sometimes how much shear force we're using to squeeze those tongs. But they certainly could be used. You just have to, you know, do it in a delicate fashion. Okay, so those are getting real close now. I'd say almost to the point where we can take them out and finish up this lesson. Okay. Let's get a plate. Show what they look like on a plate. There we go. So we'll call that one done. Gently again. All right, so as you can see, I've placed them on a wire rack with some paper toweling underneath. Now I realize not everybody has a wire rack. That's okay. If you don't have a wire rack, then you know what I have under here is, move those out of the way. I got just a little pan, just happens to be a pizza pan, with a little bit of paper toweling, and you can certainly just, you know, place them right onto that, you know, just like this. And that would be certainly acceptable as well too. A lot of times that's what I do when I'm just kind of in a hurry or maybe a little lazy. But in this case, because I wanted to get them nice and crispy all the way around, I put the little wire rack down there. And as you can see, they're a beautiful brown color. Okay, you want to let that oil cool completely, and then you want to strain it and put it back into, you know, a plastic container or discard of it. But it must be cooled down completely, cold. Okay, you don't want to put hot or even warm oil in plastic container because it does run the risk of course, melting the plastic. And then you can just place your little macaronis onto a nice plate or whatever you might have, doesn't matter. Just like that. Okay. And you now have fried macaroni and cheese, and those look pretty good. Got a little chopped parsley, you could add a little bit of chopped parsley or a little bit of chopped cilantro, or even a little sprinkling of cheddar cheese on there to kind of let them melt onto the outside of them as well too. But you want to try to maintain that, you know, crispy exterior. And then let's go ahead and tear one open. Oh yeah. So that's what they'll look like in the inside. Nice and cheesy and melty. Little bits of bacon, little bits of jalapeno. That looks good. Real good. Matter of fact, they are. They're really good. Just a fun little snack food. Fun little finger food.